Over the last month or so, there has been plenty of talk of the $1,000+ graphics cards that require many nuclear reactors to power on, and may or not burst into flames once you do so. Today, we're going to be looking at a DIY mini PC that you can build at home for less than $250. Best of all, it's this big. Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff. Most of the talk in the tech sphere over the last month has revolved around NVIDIA's latest Blackwell GPUs, both around their performance and the absurdly high prices and complete lack of availability. And while I'm tepidly excited to see what AMD brings to the table in the RX 9070, today I wanted to take a step back and see just what's possible today on some of the lowest end hardware that I could find. Now, obviously, I have a sweet spot when it comes to small form factor builds, as over the last couple of months, I've been playing around with the Minis Forum MS01 and an RTX 4000 Ada small form factor graphics card, which by itself is nearly a $2,000 combo on its own. No, today we're going to be taking a look at an order of magnitude less expensive hardware in the Lenovo ThinkCentre M720Q. This tiny little box was sent over to me by user Burnout over on my Discord server, so thanks for sending this over for me to take a look at. The M720Q has been modified with a 3D printed top shell and front panel designed by YouTuber ITG Gear, shedding its bog standard office PC aesthetic for something a little bit more sleeker and gamery. I'll have a link down to their channel in the video description below. Definitely check them out if you like small form factor and office PC conversions. Inside the M720Q, we're looking at an 8th gen Intel Core i5-8400T desktop processor with 6 cores and 6 threads. Intel T variant processors are made specifically for low power machines just like this, with just a 35-watt TDP. But don't sell it too short, as it's capable of boosting up to 3.5 GHz on a single core, or holding a 3 GHz boost on all 6. We've got 16 GB of DDR4 2666 memory, along with a 512 GB NVMe drive for storage. All pretty standard stuff when it comes to small form factor PCs. But the M720Q has a trick up its sleeve, with a full desktop size expansion slot. Now, I would imagine that this was intended to be used for 2.5 gigabit networking or something similar, but there's no reason you can't opt for a discrete graphics card. To give this old office PC some new gaming chops, we've got an AMD Radeon RX 6400 inside. Now, the 6400 is one of the most hated modern graphics cards in recent memory. Is it a great value in terms of performance at $159? Absolutely not. But it is a low-profile GPU that requires just 55 watts of power, making it one of the best solutions for a small PC like this. Now, I still wouldn't recommend buying one of these cards brand new just to slide it into a gaming PC, but you can find OEM models from HP and Dell on the used market for under $100 these days, and that makes them quite the fantastic bargain. Now, if the RX 6400 isn't quite enough for you, you could also opt to go for Yeston's RTX 3050 single-slot card. While it is more than twice expensive, you get the added bonus of having DLSS available, which could dramatically improve the performance in games, even above the FSR support that is on the 6400. Now, my thoughts for such a small and low-cost PC was to use this basically like a games console. So, I've got Bazzite installed, giving us a svelte and sleek 1-liter steam machine that's capable of 1080p gaming in a surprising number of titles. Now, just so we're clear about expectations, the absolute latest and greatest are still going to struggle pretty hard here. Games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Starfield, they're not playable on this, despite my best efforts. But games that are even just a couple of years old are not only playable, but an overall pretty great experience, so long as you're not looking for the best graphics of all time. And what do I mean by that? Well, speaking of Kingdom Come 2, you can expect upwards of 45 frames per second when you're indoors. So long as you never leave Bozenia's hut, the game actually runs quite well. Unfortunately, just a glimpse of the great outdoors will have this PC begging for mercy. Expect single-digit frame rates in combat, and that's just with a single guard that I pissed off. I can't imagine what it would have been like had he had any friends. One of my favorite games, Wreckfest, running at 1080p and low settings, is a bit of an interesting situation that actually reminded me of issues that the game had years ago on some older hardware, mostly due to the Lenovo's aging CPU. Much of the AI processing and destructible physics are handled by the CPU in this game. In a starting grid of 24 cars, the game was basically unplayable, rendering at about 16 frames per second. Once you get out onto the track though, with only a couple cars in your direct vision, you can expect around 45 FPS on average, with some spikes sometimes climbing as high as 100 frames per second or more. But this game simply can't run at a steady frame rate on this hardware, with the CPU just not able to keep up most of the time. This was a problem in this game with lower power CPUs until Zen 3 and Raptor Lake hit the scene and basically made that a thing of the past. But those games are about the worst of it. Overall, the Intel 8400T and RX 6400 managed to pull off some impressive numbers. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, we're getting between 100 and 135 frames per second on average at 1080p low settings and FSR2 enabled. In fact, with FSR enabled, we've got enough headroom to turn settings up to medium and stay comfortably at 60 frames per second. Not bad for one of the worst modern GPUs tossed inside of a 7-year-old Office PC. Helldivers 2 at the Steam Deck quality preset impressed even further, holding a rock-solid 60 frames per second with the GPU hovering at about 80% utilization most of the time. I opted to enable VSync in this one in an effort to keep the frame rate as consistent as possible, and that seems to have been the right approach here. While I don't have my typical benchmark numbers, according to the frame rate counter in Steam's overlay, frames rarely, if ever, exceeded 20 milliseconds per frame, or around 50 FPS at worst. Surprisingly enough, even at low settings, Helldivers manages to still look pretty darn great. Shadows and lighting effects don't resort to being blocky like in a lot of other games, and overall, I never had an issue locating a target out in front of me. 10 out of 10, solid gameplay and experience, and would absolutely play again on this hardware. And finally, Red Dead Redemption 2 was fantastic overall, with an average of 60 frames per second, with a 60 frame per second cap again in place. This was one of the balanced presets, which scans your hardware to figure out what are the best settings for your PC. And in this case, we're looking at high textures and medium geometry and lighting. Even at this setting, Red Dead is still an absolutely beautiful game, and was shockingly not only playable, but damn good looking on our homemade Steam machine here. The latest of the best of the best. That means your Cyberpunks and your Indiana Joneses of the world probably aren't going to perform well, if at all, on this system. And Kingdom Come 2 was basically a slideshow. But load up any game that's more than a year or two old, and I think you're going to be surprised. Many developers have been focusing on making games playable for either the Steam Deck, or at worst, a modern handheld gaming PC with a Ryzen 7840U. While the old and low-powered Intel 8400T doesn't hold a candle to 8 cores and 16 threads of AMD's Zen 4 architecture, the Radeon RX 6400 still has a leg up on AMD's most popular APU in the 780M. The fact that this PC right here, which costs less than $250, will play all but half a dozen titles on Steam today, means that gaming doesn't have to be just a rich man's hobby. While this tiny PC isn't going to blow your mind with the latest in ray-traced graphics, and you might need to squint to apply your own anti-aliasing, there's no question that almost every game that I load up on here was playable. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, if you find yourself wanting a bit more on the graphics side of things, Yeson's RTX 3050 single-slot GPU might be an upgrade worth considering if you're looking for a small form factor box just like this. If you're interested in building your own consoleized Steam machine, I will have a link down in the video description on where to find all of the parts, as well as links to the 3D STLs for making your own vented top and front panels. On your way down there, make sure to drop this video a like and subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Blue Sky at Craft Computing for daily shenanigans like this. And if you like the content you see on this channel and want to help support me in what I do, consider joining the Patreon. Link is also down in the video description. And that's going to do it for me in this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Cheers, everyone. I am so happy today because I have one of my favorite beers. This is Santiam Brewing's Pirate Stout, a rum barrel-aged coconut stout clocking in at 8%. And I said it during the intro, but I think it bears repeating. This is one of my favorite beers. Not only is it a stout, it's not all that heavy of a stout. It's only 8%, but it's a standard barrel-aged stout. You can find this anytime. They brew this 12 months a year over at Santiam. I can find it on tap. Thankfully, Santiam is local to me. Or you can get it in cans. And the 6-pack of cans is not all that expensive. I think it's like $14, $16. For that price, This is one heck of a good beer. It is a stout, but on the nose, it is a little bit subdued. It's more reminiscent of like a solid English brown ale on the nose. Just a little bit malty, but nothing roasty, nothing dark, nothing really extravagant there. And then we get into the main flavor of this drink. It's not super thick. It is a dark beer, but it's not motor oil consistency. It's not one that you have to cut with a knife. It's just a good drinkable dark beer. And again, it's nothing too heavy. It's very malty up front. It's got a little bit of the coconut that kind of takes over midway through the flavor. And then it leaves you just a little bit with like a roasted coffee and roasted coconut kind of flavor to it. It's, for such a dark beer, strangely refreshing. And while all of those flavors are there, none of them are too intense. And so even if you're like, ooh, I'm not a big coffee fan, I'm not a big coconut fan, I'm not this, I'm not that, it's very mellow. And I think that's what makes the beer so good, is it's not intense. It doesn't punch you in the face with a lot of these flavors. They're just there, and all of them are just good. I can't say enough good things about this beer. Obviously, I'm a bit biased. It's a local favorite of mine, but if you're ever in the neighborhood, grab one of these.